What is a job people romanticize a bit too much until they actually do it? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Chef. Absolutely nothing like TV would have you believe. Maybe 10 of the job is actually innovating and cooking dishes. The rest is a ton of paperwork, scheduling, managing people, managing inventory, working with sales reps, and you also have to be prepared to jump in and fill help every and all stations in the kitchen at a moment's notice. You often work 60-hour weeks, 10-hour days, and you're on your feet a majority of the time. Answer: I absolutely love cooking and I'm very good at it. Anytime we host, I always get an abundance of praise and more than a few, "You should open a restaurant." Comments, no mere naffing. Way my dad was in the hospitality food service industry most of his life. Even though he moved into management and had a decent income and okay hours, there's zero chance I'm doing service industry. And especially a chef, it's hot. It's dangerous. It's you being at work all day for almost no pay. And every special occasion, like holidays, weekends, or basically any other time people are normally with their families, you're at work. You're always at work. Not to mention the substance abuse that runs rampant. It's a nightmare job in a nightmare industry, and you can keep it. Story 2. Any job that requires a lot of travel. You think traveling will be cool, but then you realize you're just working or stuck in a hotel, eating unhealthy and running back and forth from the airport. Answer: I came to say this. Living out of a suitcase and spending more time away than at home wears on you, or it at least does me. The moment servers at airport restaurants in multiple countries started recognizing me because I frequent them so much was a wake-up call. I've had dreams of inventing new recipes while traveling because I wanted to cook for myself so badly, and all I can get is restaurant food. This doesn't even begin to describe how bad I feel about leaving my husband and animals alone for weeks at a time so often. Story 3. I strongly suspect being a spy doesn't involve half as many high-tech gadgets and spontaneous intimacy intercourse as I've been led to believe. Answer: my grandma was a spy for the proto-CIA. She was a courier. Her detail every day was to check in, take a stack of papers, envelopes, folders, and distribute them around D.C. When she dropped something off, there were decoy drops also, and she had to stay and see which item was retrieved. When she was done, she checked out and went home. She carried a rabbit inside her jacket at all times. The rabbit was trained to go back to the handler if my grandma ever dropped it. They would know she was compromised and she would be burnt. She was declassified in 1999, just after I turned 18. I had no idea until she just said, "Well, you know I was a spy for a while." Story 4. My suspicions turned out to be true after reading all of these comments. Every job sucks, just in different ways. Edit: I appreciate the replies from those that love their jobs, truly. Now I'll just sit back and dream about hitting the lottery, even though I've never bought a ticket or actually know how to fill one of them out. Answer: I fudge love my job. I work in museum collections, but the job is hard to get, requires you to be overeducated, underpaid for said education, and you're competing with hundreds of other qualified applicants for the job. Also understaffing, lack of institutional support funding, and having to see the massive pay gap between academic and design staff versus administrative staff. My job is hard and stressful at times, but if I could go back and do it all over again, it'd still go into museum collections work. Story 5. Veterinarian. From the outside, it looks like puppy cuddles. In reality, it's crushing student debt, long shifts, angry owners, frequent euthanasia, and compassion fatigue. Answer: once upon a time, my dad offered to help if I wanted to go to veterinary school. I had been working with animals, mostly horses, for years. I declined on the grounds that while I love animals, as I vet, I'd have to deal with owners. I got enough of a taste of small animal care as well, from a stint as an assistant in a small animal clinic, so I got to see the full spectrum of dumb jerk owners. I'm not people-friendly anyway, but especially when I get to see the results of their stupidity on other living creatures. Story 6. Animal rescue. The job is rewarding AF, but also soul-sucking, and the saddest thing you will ever do. The things some people will say to you will make you lose faith in all humanity, then someone will show up and restore it. It is a wild roller coaster, and in the end, it is more sad than happy. Story 7. I would say every freelance or independent job, I feel like people tend to only see the be your own boss thing without seeing the unstable aspect of it, money-wise, but most importantly, health and mental health-wise. Been there, aha. Answer: freelance illustrator here can confirm. During my week, I am mostly dropping my portfolio for work, perusing hungry artists for more work, networking, marketing, social media, emails, applying for tabling space at markets and conventions, budgeting for merch, prints and shirts, invoicing and taxes. Like 20 hours of my week is actually the fun part, with drawing and painting, and then being told my job will be replaced by AI and being told my job isn't real. LOL. Don't get me started on third-party scam sites stealing your hard work to put on shirts. Anyway, if you like the art in your favorite tabletop game, on your books, posters, album covers, thank an artist. Story 8, teaching. You think you're molding young minds and get to enjoy being with children all day? Till the system works you so hard you don't have the capacity to help the kids you want to help, and you're so burnt out you don't even care. Answer. My mom just retired from teaching after 52 years. She said one of the worst parts was policy and curriculum guidelines being set at the state-federal level by people who hadn't set foot in a classroom since their student teaching days, and how politicized it's become. And having to constantly benchmark everything for the state and teaching how to take standardized tests so your school doesn't lose funding due to low scores. She taught first grade, and it was important to her for her kids to have a really solid foundation so they weren't playing catch-up their entire school career. The last few decades were really frustrating because they were simultaneously trying to make kids smarter by teaching things earlier, but also discouraging critical thinking. We're concrete thinkers when we start school, and the average kid is going to struggle with abstract concepts until their brain matures more. I also think my mom didn't realize that she would have to testify in child abuse cases, or the number of times she would need to report things to CPS when she started her teaching degree, or that she would lose a couple of students to domestic violence over the years. Story 9. Marine biologist. The reefs are degrading and dying more every year, and it's basically your job to be clinically depressed about it. Answer. Not necessarily true. There's plenty of marine biologists who study different marine ecosystems. They are still clinically depressed because getting into science is really tough. Getting a permanent position as a scientist is almost impossible. Think 30 highly qualified applicants for one job. That's after getting your PhD, where finding a position can be just as tricky. Story 10. Any high travel job, especially sales, flights, hotels, and meals out, and time away from your family and important events gets old real fast. Then you still have to sell, forecast, close deals, and deliver to your numbers. Those numbers are usually completely arbitrary and randomly made up by your company. Then if you miss them, you're fired. If you make them, they raise them the next year. Answer. My job isn't high travel, but I take a few trips a year for work. Grandma will say, oh wow, you're going to NYC this week. Send pictures of Central Park, and then has to be let down when I'll respond. Well, actually, I'll be spending a couple of nights in a suburban NJ hotel and driving over to our site on the south side of Staten Island during the day. Probably won't even see the skyline. Dad doesn't travel much anymore, but he did 2-3 checks a month for 25 years. We'd think it was so cool growing up that he's been so many places, and he'd always say, I've seen nothing in most of these places except meeting rooms, courtyard inns, and whatever sports bar was closest to the hotel. Traveling for leisure, I used to ask him for any wrecks in places like San Diego or New Orleans, where he's been a dozen or more times, and he'd have nothing to say, so I gave up. Story 11. Homesteading. You don't want to work for the man from Swantumbi to 501 5 days a week for 40 years and then retire? Congratulations, now you're working 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day for the rest of your life. Answer. I knew a retired couple who sold everything in the U.S. to start an organic farm in Uruguay. I was backpacking nearby, so I took a detour to visit. They looked like they'd been through war. The farm was broke, and the only thing keeping them from total ruin was renting the land they were unable to farm to nearby ranchers for pasturing. They worked all day every day to run a cow parking lot. They've since sold the farm and moved to Florida. Story 12. Working as front desk agent in one of the most expensive and luxurious resorts in the world. You love traveling, and sometimes you meet celebrities you dig, but when your average guest is from the top 1, nothing drains your soul more than serving people who feel like they own you. Naturally. Story 13. I interned as an art restorer. It was incredibly tedious and lonely. Were there cool things about it? Absolutely. Is it worth the competition and level of schooling required to do it professionally? Not in my opinion. Story 14. Professional musician. You have to play some pretty soul-crushing gigs to make a living, unless you're famous. Story 15. Baker. If you mess up one thing, it can ruin an entire week at the bakery. You have to be on your game almost constantly. Story 16. Pet services. We really do all love dogs and animals. but your sweet little baby is actually just an animal, and they act like one. Sometimes we have the best angels ever. Other times the dog is trying to eat us the whole time, doing dog sitting on more than one occasion. Owners would tell me their dog was potty trained. Dog pottied on the floor every day more than once. And they had pee pads in every corner of the house. They knew but lied. Or they tell me their dog goes on 3 walks a day. I take Pooch out 3 times a day. By day 3, the dogs look at me with sorrow in their eyes as they realize they're going to have to go walk around again in the summer sun, which they have not been doing more than twice a week normally. Lololol. Answer: I think most work with animals is like this. People love animals but then find out most of the time is spent doing what are essentially messy chores, cleaning up poop, putting out feed, etc., or difficult, unfun things, like dealing with behavioral problems or having to put animals down. Also, the worst part of all, having to deal with the people who own the animals. Story 17. Healthcare. No, we do not spend our time fudge each other. I couldn't even brush my teeth nor comb my hair during my 24-hour on calls, let alone look at another person with lustful eyes. Answer: this. I had an appointment for compression stockings with the most amazingly kind guy in a hospital. Amazing conversation. Then I looked at his chart. Pancreatic cancer. 0 prognosis. He somehow was hopeful, and I had to tell him the truth. Then went to a retirement home for a peroneus orthotic. Someone died in the lobby. Then got back to my company, literally sobbing. But there's a customer in the front, so got a plaster on a huge smile and be helpful on command. Just to be yelled at for half an hour because that someone refuses to pay a $12 copay out of principle. I'm an orthopedic tech, so I'm by far not as bad off as other medical professionals, but it can be soul-sucking. Story 18. Speaking as a novelist, I'm a firm believer that everyone has a book inside them. It is not always a good book, and sometimes it should stay there. Story 19. Farming, ranching, television shows make it look glamorous. It's hot, unending, backbreaking work, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Answer: I grew up working on dairy farms and cash crop farms in the area I lived, as there was a huge farming community there, and lots of people needed farm help. It is extremely difficult work, and I thought I would never want to do it again. While I know that I would probably get tired of the 7-day-a-week commitment, I can say now, 20 years removed from it and cooped up at a desk all day, that there is a lot of joy and fulfillment to be found doing that work. I thought I needed mental stimulation, as I was academically inclined and so pursued jobs I thought would offer that. Needless to say, where I am at now, there is little mental or physical stimulation. While I agree that most people who romanticize it have no idea how hard and smelly it is and wouldn't last on a real farm, if you know what you are getting into, there is a certain simple romanticism about it, if you could remove the fact that most farmers struggle to make a living from it. Story 20. I'd say veterinarian or vet tech. The industry as a whole has changed the past decade to more corporately owned practices. This means higher prices and less staffing overall. Veterinarians are among the highest tragic end rates by profession, and it isn't getting any easier. It's not just puppies and kittens all day. Story 21. Nursing. They think we are Florence Nightingale. The amount of friends, relatives I have met who have shared that if they could redo their career, they would want to be a nurse. My kids would have to fight me to be a nurse, or any shift work, to be honest. Answer: nursing has been a solid career that has allowed me to be home with my kids and make a decent living. That being said, the work is gross, hard on your body, and way too often very, very, very sad. I work in LD, and everybody thinks it's all cuddles and babies. People look at me like this when they hear what I do. But you spend a decent amount of time shoot yourself hoping nothing bad is going to happen, managing parents that do substances, helping deliver dead babies, giving people bad news like they're going to lose their other fallopian tube and IVF is now their only option, telling people something is wrong with their baby, etc. And on top of all that, even in the healthiest case, people are still incredibly rude to you, patients and doctors. So don't go into nursing expecting peaches and cream. It's a hard job, and we don't get paid enough for the work we do. But I will say I wouldn't do anything else. My job gives me purpose and food on my table. It gives me a lot of time with my kids. I wouldn't have chosen anything else, even with the bad parts. Edit: been a nurse for 8 years, all bedside. Story 22. Teaching. People think it's just summers off and inspiring kids, but it's a lot of stress, grading, and meetings you didn't know existed. Story 23. Winemaking. My husband is a winemaker, and it is extremely romanticized. Until you realize how much stickiness, pressure washing, and spiders are involved, you're also basically a farmer, so work to be done all year long. Story 24. Military service. It actually sucks. A lot. Your start time is 0630. Be there at Oro 200. Why? So we can shiver for 4.5 HRs in the cold for no reason until XO gets there at 0628. Hey, it's 1:12 outside. Let's go unpack a 40 FT metal Connex. Then take all that moldy equipment out, lay it out, inventory it, and pack it all back up. Tomorrow we are going to do it all again because LT didn't see there was 4 pages, not 3. Do you love your family? Well, we say we do, but we will keep you at work until 7 p.m. every night, including Fridays, because one SG dislikes his wife and doesn't want to go home. Want a traditional family? Well, not on your pay. We will pay you less than minimum wage and tell you how financially irresponsible you are for only making $960 per paycheck. Do you want your doctors to practice on you? Well, that's what they do. WebMD is the backbone of the military world. It's not a cold, it's the plague. Story 25, any of them. If they pay you for it, there's a reason. The question is, what are you able to tolerate for the money? Story 26, chef, I dislike it. The hours suck, the work is grueling, the pay is shoot, the job security is non-existent. People watch shows like Hell's Kitchen, The Bear, in movies like Chef, and think it's all yelling, and this fast action bullshit. Not even close. As a professional chef, you are mostly managing vendor orders, sweating like a whore in church while standing at the pass for 5-6 hours, and just moving product to and toward. Absolutely grueling. Hours are terrible. You have no social life. Pay is terrible. Raises infrequent. I worked at a 2-star Michelin restaurant, retired when my daughter was on the way. I was given a 2.0 raise after 4 years, no paid vacation, no benefits. Insulting. At a corporate job, I literally made twice the salary in 1 year and had 2 weeks of paid vacation and medical insurance. I partied too hard 12 years working in the food service industry. I was wealthy in 10 years working in an entirely different profession and industry. Story 27. I think almost every job, for me, IT, people think I work magic on machines with flashing lights and data spools like something from a 70s data center. What I really do is answer stupid questions and shoot down silly suggestions in endless meeting from old people who don't work on computers, operating on little to no budget because IT is a business expense and a nuisance. Story 28. Everything in fashion. From fashion design to modeling to marketing to pattern making to fashion photography. It's a world full of dislike and competition. No one cares if you life or die. I tried to continue in fashion, but as a makeup artist. Same story. You work your jerk off and still everyone dislike you. It's a world where your name needs to be seen everywhere every day for years and years. And maybe then you can make a full-time living out of it with the right connections, but only if you are also conventionally attractive. The people I kept in touch with from Fashion Academy are on the verge of a burnout, or they recover from burnout and going for different jobs now. Story 29. I tell you what, a real romanticized job is being forklift certified. It is all the hype it's meant to be. Those managers can't tell you nothing. Am forklift certified meanie. Free pass at work to do what I want. Story 30. Any trade job. More recently than before, office employees see the writing on the wall with AI layoff sec and think to themselves, a trade job should be easy. I'm tired being chained to a desk anyways. It will be way better working outside and new places all the time. They apply and realize their office skills have zero translation to the trades, and nobody wants to hire them, give them a chance. Then when given the chance, they realize why people would rather work in the office anyways, because it's back-breaking work for the majority of trades. Story 31. Pretty much anything creative. Musician, graphic design, copywriter. It all sounds amazing till you're in it. Source, have worked these fields all my life. Story 32. Healthcare work, sorry. We are not like Grey's Anatomy. The teachers aren't even hot. They're mainly old and sassy. Story 33. I think software engineers have a very highfalutin way of talking about what they do. They're hackers, they're elite, they're in a flow state, but in reality, day to day, it's mostly just plumbing. You're building something not terribly interesting, mostly out of off-the-shelf components. Answer. Most of the time, if you're working to maintain an existing software, you're just answering email tickets or doing dumb meetings with clients about how something isn't working how they picture it to be. I partied too hard many hours, days, weeks, doing research and having meetings. Then in the end, it turns out they don't really want it after finding out how much work and cost it is to add that small new feature. But the pay is nice, so that to keep me going. But there's some days where I feel like I'm stagnating and feeling unfulfilled. Story 34. Working at a public library. So many of my patrons will say, It must be so relaxing. Reading all day must be so nice. Meanwhile, I had to stop someone from watching hentai on our public computers and had to stop 2 patrons from fighting over a computer. Story 35. Teaching all the other parts are so tiring and time-consuming. When you are in front of the kids, actually teaching it is the greatest thing in the world. Story 36. Firefighter. The suit cannot easily be washed and it gets so hot in it, so it reeks of old sweat. Nothing glamorous about it. Plus, the real danger is the smoke more than flames. There's nothing heroic about dying of throat or lung cancer at 40. It's just a fudge tragedy. Also, professional firemen spend hours doing nothing, so it's super boring. But you know what? It might just be one of those jobs where it's for the best when they do nothing. Means no one's dying. For voluntary firefighters, it's worse. You go to bed without knowing if you're going to get called. If you do, there's no chance you don't wake your partner up, so it can put a strain on the relationship. Or at least it takes a partner who's on board as well. Had a coworker who was a voluntary firefighter. He told me that some weeks he had a negative paycheck, as he was paid only if he was called, whereas some employee contributions, namely mandatory union fees, were withdrawn no matter what. No bonus for simply being on call. I don't know how much pro firefighters are paid, but it must be between not enough and no chance in hell I'd risk my life for that kind of money. And yeah, like all first responders, sometimes they do their best and it's still not enough, and they get to see things nobody should ever have to witness. Lastly, if I fudge up in an Excel spreadsheet, I'm pretty sure my manager is going to get over it at some point. Fudge up as a firefighter could mean that you eliminate your teammates. Honestly, anyone willing to do that job has to be completely nuts, but they also deserve all my admiration and gratitude. Answer: professional firefighter here, and you'd be surprised how little time we spend doing nothing. Sure, maybe late at night we can hang out and watch TV, but the days are chock full of training, PR events, and more paperwork than you can think of. Our turnouts can in fact be washed, and most professional departments will have facilities to do so. Cancer is real in our field, though. Not just from smoke, but almost constant exposure to diesel exhaust and other chemicals. Even the stuff our protective clothing is made of, and most of us will be eventually get it. Not to mention the high rates of divorce, mental health issues, and substance abuse. Not to mention the absolute soul drain that is chronic abuse of the 911 system. I work in the LA area, and about 80 of our calls are medical, not fire, and about 80 of those don't need an ambulance or a paramedic. Our job is definitely over-romanticized in the media, but I, for one, would not trade it for anything. Out of all the bullshit we deal with, the one call where you actually save a life makes it all worth it. Story 37. University professor. Political, grueling, exacting, and not particularly lucrative given the level of training required. No paneled offices with fireplaces nor squealing orgies, but plenty of people who are particularly good at late-stage manipulation, a la Pornell's iron law of bureaucracies, though this is usual in any large organization. Jerry Pornell himself headed Boeing's Human Factors Lab. There are a few perks. Being accused as being a de facto academic liberal, then asking which major in the College of Engineering that was in, and watching them turn pale is one of them. Story 38. Teacher, the unfortunate favorite opinion is that they only work 9 months and are paid for a 3-month summer vacation. Story 39. Police, you have all these TV shows with detectives and street-level cops busting down doors, removing substances from streets, catching killers, etc. All action. While in reality, your job goes from paperwork, dead body, paperwork, stopping some tipsy guy, paperwork, corpse with no head or guts spilling out while you have to secure the scene until the specialized people get there, paperwork. Repeat with occasional visit to school or some stuff where you are around kids. Dead body, some Karen shouting at you for being a useless cop, etc. Kinamainoi. Paperwork. Go tell someone their family member died. Paperwork. Repeat until you leave, or the psychic eval renders you not suitable to work. On top of that, extremely long shifts in case of emergency. They'll pull you out because you are needed. Bad pay with extreme danger. On top of that, you may have to get statements from someone who got violation, stabbed, or saw their family member get eliminated, and bunch of other stuff. Story 40. Factory worker, especially in our current political atmosphere, people say, bring back factories, which I get the idea behind it, since it was a job that could allow someone to support a family on one income. But actually doing makes you feel so drained. Standing in one spot for 8-12 hours, doing the same monotonous task, and working potentially 7 days out of the week. It's good money, but it's mental torture. Story 41. Archaeologist. You don't run around like Indiana Jones. You spend a lot of time looking at pottery sherds and trying to get funding. There's also math. Story 42. Touring with a band. 99 of us don't get the fancy hotels. The smell in the van gets horrible. It's exhausting. Glad I don't do it anymore. That said, meeting people in different places and chatting with folks who like your band is extremely gratifying. Also, sometimes you end up on a bill with a real banger of a band, and that is always fun. Story 43. Furniture making. People see these nice videos of someone hand-applying some finish to the completed piece and think, wouldn't that be a nice job? The reality is you spend God knows how many hours going from noisy, messy machine to the next noisy, messy machine, making all the joints for a few mins of glory at the end. Then you end up working for diddly squat an hour. Don't ask me how I know. Story 44. Videographer. Has some super fun aspects, but the skills needed and the industry are always changing, so it's difficult to keep up. Story 45. Librarian for those who like to read. It's very competitive, low pay, you fight for funding and against censorship because some people aren't comfortable with lifestyles they don't understand. Story 46. Security. It might sound fun sitting around basically getting paid to watch TV, mess around on a computer, play video games, and watch YouTube all day, but never mind, it is actually pretty cool, ain't gonna lie. Story 47. Truck driver, UK. When I left school, I got my HGV, as it was then, license to fall back on if I ever needed it. About 15 years later, I ended up between contracts and decided to give it a go. I was a freelance driver and quickly built up a good solid range of contacts and contracts that meant I was never short of work. I spent about 4 years driving all over the UK and Europe, and every single UK job was a nightmare. Got treated like dirt for no reason. So much stress with everything needing to be done more quickly than humanly possible. Very little access to any sort of toilet facilities. Many places forced you to eat unhealthily, no cooking in the cab, and parking spots generally weren't safe or even a nice place to be. Taking legal breaks normally caused planners to feel inconvenienced, and life was just generally very unpleasant. Running in mainland Europe, though, was a delight. Nice roads treated properly, clean and safe parking, and realistic allowances for time and traffic. Anyone thinking driving a large commercial vehicle in the UK is much more than parking in human slime-covered laybys, eating junk food and being told you're late and not allowed access to the facilities, whilst you sit in a deck chair in the corner of a warehouse for 4 hours waiting for a single pallet to be unloaded is rather mistaken. Answer: am a truck driver in the US. I came to this as a second career at 50. Been doing it for 14 years now. Some jobs in the US are like you describe in the UK. I have found one that is more like what you describe in Europe. I do true long haul in the IS, running from East Coast to West Coast and back. Decent pay, insane hours, and lots of beautiful scenery. Story 48. Librarianship. You have to love this job to do it. The pay is low for people with master's degrees. The work can be heavy if you work at a regional or busy branch. And we're constantly under fire in the media lately and worrying about budget cuts. The day-to-day of the job is often assisting a homeless population that has a variety of substance abuse issues, wrangling teenagers, and helping elderly, computer illiterate, and non-English speaking populations. People can frequently be vicious, violent, opinionated, and intimacy harassing toward librarians. I think if folks saw our internal incident reports, they wouldn't believe even half of it. Don't get me wrong, I love and believe in what I do, and there are many wonderful moments, but it's not for everybody. Story 49. Therapist LOL. People think they will be loved if they become a therapist. Turns out it's a stressing job with a lot of people even hating you. Answer: can confirm. Also, having friends who consider you free therapy is annoying. I've actually had to tell some friends I'd have to start charging them my hourly rate, considering how much they called and talked to me about their problems. Some of them did not take that well. And you can't really stop psychoanalyzing people. I asked my own therapist once when I was still studying to become one myself and asked if I could turn it off somehow. Nope, you're cursed with it now. Best you can do is just keep your mouth shut. It really sucks when you notice friends and family being stuck in thought behavioral patterns that aren't helping them, but you can't do jack shit about them lest you become an annoying know-it-all or worse. Learn that the hard way. I really had to learn to let people deal with their own shoot on their own timeline. Some people genuinely don't want help or want to get better. Story 50. Insulating houses. Everyone thinks it's this glamorous job, but it's not really all it's cracked up to be. Sure, we get to crawl through old fiberglass in 120 attics, and we get to crawl through mud in flooded out crawl spaces, but it has its downsides too. I mean, yeah, everyone wants to stand on a ladder in a blizzard cutting holes in a house all day, but eventually, nothing else will make you happy. You just kind of go numb to everything. Family, friends, hobbies, nothing else provides that sweet rush you get when you watch foam insulation expand to fill a 12 gap in a sill plate. Story 51, Armed Service. There are real heroes, but a lot of us are just IT guys or truck mechanics that might have to work a few months in a faraway desert. Some die for bravely facing the enemy. Some get ambushed. Some die because they are dumbasses that rarely consider their own safety, especially when blowing off steam and recreating. Veterans shouldn't command some supreme level of respect by default. Save that for the Purple Hearts, the Navy Crosses, the Bronze Stars, and others who have distinguished themselves. Sincerely, a POG vet with nothing but a NAM, GWAT, a good cookie, and National Defense Ribbon. Story 52. Teaching. The number of people think that they can retire from their first career and then teach for the remainder of their working life is wild. Story 53. Part 99 of the work is what I used to call Riverbend. All kinds of trashy stuff that has little to do with fighting crime. Crazy old ladies walking around naked, domestic disputes without any real danger for either part. But one of them wants the police to give family member a scare. This kind of thing. Story 54. Any white-collar job where you're in an office and you have the word analyst in your job title and you have a little badge reel and a desk and a nice air-conditioned office building and you have Teams meetings and a little laptop and banker's hours. TikTok romanticized the hell out of these jobs, but they're full of horseshoe and they're not stable jobs. And you're subject to layoffs and stupid managers and stupid customers, and it makes you dislike life really quickly. Story 55. Travel writing. Everyone thinks it's 5-star hotels and free drinks and loads of adventures, but really it's a lonely slog. Story 56. Librarian. I just love books. I would love to read stories to children are the top things I hear. We don't read on the clock, and story time is 1 hour a week. The rest is relentless customer service, hours of administrative nonsense, and unpaid and untrained social work. We help terrified people trying to get their immigration documents in order, court-ordered visits, teens kicked out of family homes and unable to return their books, schizophrenic people convinced our computers are operated by wizards, battered women needing restraining order paperwork. It's a lot. Story 57. Pimp. It's really a lot of standing around on street corners all night in some sketchy neighborhoods and dealing with unreliable partners, all while dodging the police and other rival pimps. It's not at all like how it sounds in rap lyrics. Story 58. Farming. We play farming sims, romanticize getting back to the land and living in the country. But being raised by a farmer, let me tell you, most of human history has been either trying to get away from the farm or trying desperately to make farming suck less. The hours are long, the pay sucks, the work grinds your body down, and you have to be outdoors in all weather. Oh, and an entire season of backbreaking labor can be destroyed in 1 hour of bad weather. Story 59. City planner. Turns out your city's being planned by real estate developers, and city planners just do paperwork to make it look like the new developments won't mess up people's lives. Story 60. This is a bit of an obscure one, but for me, the answer is working in Antarctica. I've spent 9 field seasons working on the ice as part of different research projects. In each of my deployments, I'd first pass through McMurdo Station before heading out to the deep field. I'd meet so many young people in McMurdo that all had the same story. They delayed or dropped out of college or quit their stable jobs for the opportunity to live and work in Antarctica. They all talked about how it would be this magical experience and had romantic visions of braving the elements like Shackleton. The truth is, though, that most of these young workers ended up living and working in McMurdo, often as janitors, cargo haulers, or in the mess hall. The work is terrible, and they are basically stuck for 6 months in a stinky little diesel town. They watch all the scientists come through and head out to these exotic and remote places while they are stuck cleaning bathrooms in the McMurdo dorms. With that said, the work out at the field camps is not really any more glamorous. I would work 12-hour shifts and 40 temps, drilling and logging ice cores. I've had frost nip multiple times and nothing heals at those temps. It's incredibly exhausting work, and unless you are really passionate about the science, it can be hard to stay motivated. Thankfully, I do love my work in glaciology, so my deployments have been rewarding, but the days are still incredibly hard. You're always just so cold. Story 61. Gardening. People who never done it as a job always seem to think it's so great, how you're one with nature, etc., etc. Dancing with butterflies surrounded by beautiful flowers, amazing, right? In reality, it's back-breaking work. Literally. I haven't met a single gardener older than 55 because that's where your back gives up and you have to retire early or start doing an office job. I've done it for 3 years and decided I'd like to keep my spine intact. Some days were beautiful, true, but most days were actual pain. Nope. I've gained a shitload of respect for people choosing gardening as a lifelong career, but I also feel a bit sad for the ones not realizing how hard this job is on your body long term. Story 62. Military. You spend a lot of time sitting around and waiting. You are most likely not ever going to be talented enough to be doing any of the cool stuff you see in movies. And if you're deployed, it will fudge you up in some way. And good luck getting the appropriate care and help when you get back. Story 63. Pilot. It's fun to fly on your terms. When you fly for a living, you're going at a time you don't want to leave, going places you don't want to go, and you're with people you don't necessarily want to be with. Story 64. Bartender. People think it's all smiles and conversation while raking in loads of cash without realizing the back-end cleanup and heavy lifting. Dealing with impossible people and making sure you don't break any state laws while maintaining an entertaining atmosphere for everyone. They don't think about cleaning PS vomit off walls and floors or the concern that someone has had too much and is going to leave and bring harm to themselves or someone else. Edited to add the late nights, the lack of true sleep or any social life, the side work. The bad management. This is a general rule in the industry. I've been a tender for 25 years and to this day people still ask me what my real job is. Story 65. Anything in the trades. Absolutely brutal. Long hours, poor conditions, destroys your body, usually shoot pay to start unless you work in an area with a strong union. Co-workers are abusive pieces of shoot, pretty rare to achieve the six-figure incomes Redditors constantly repeat. Story 66. Architecture. You don't get to decide anything. Most of the decisions come from the client, investor, or in rare cases, your proposed idea just gets cut so much that by the end of the project, it looks nothing like the concept you proposed 99 of the time. If you don't abide by the client's wishes to make bullshit architecture that doesn't make sense, then hell, just find an architect who is desperate enough to do it. It's all about money, and the great and innovative ideas get buried by large egos and money. Not to mention the absurd amount of competition that has zero regard for their personal lives. So the only way to compete is to do the same and spend countless nights working, because who needs a personal life, family anyway? And by doing all of that, learning for several years fudge up your health from not sleeping properly and constantly grinding, you're rewarded with a shoot wage that can't really provide for a family. So you're left having a second job. Story 67. Lawyer. I'm an attorney myself. It's 95 documentation, research, filings, paperwork, more documentation, more research, more filings, more paperwork. Outside of the courtroom, mundane proceedings and lots of legwork. The whole show up in the courtroom and save the local paper bill from the ruthless corporate defense scene everybody has on their heads doesn't really happen. The courtroom is basically the equivalent of giving a PowerPoint presentation to a group of bored, out-of-their-mind colleagues who just want to be dismissed till they can go to lunch. Story 68. Passing care industry. You become an emotional punching bag, and the pay isn't nearly what it should be. Story 69. Pro photographer. Looks fun, but the stress of always bringing back pictures that clients love is intense, as are the days of prep time, then weeks of editing before the client sees them. The 1250th of a second goes by pretty fast, so your timing has to be perfectly honed. Did I mention skyrocketing costs of new gear? My latest walk-around camera and 2 lenses is worth about $5K. All that said, I just medically retired after 45 years working full-time as a pro photographer. Started at local paper as a teen and went on to shoot corporate, PR, kids, families, seniors, volume sports, combat, or weddings, and it was one hell of a ride. Got to go so many special places, photographed history and the people making it. And doing pictures of people, it's a connection that let me capture real smiles and emotions. The best part out of it all, shooting aerial pics of Midwest power plants while hangings out a fancy jet helicopter, like a Jet Ranger or Hughes 500 with the door removed. Digital and cell phones eliminate most good photo jobs as clients are often okay with good enough. Story 70. Cybersecurity. No, it's not like what you see in movies. In real life, it involves dealing with a lot of paperwork and documentation, regulations, policies, politics, and never-ending meetings that could have been an email. Story 71. Archaeologist. You will examine dirt at construction sites. The most interesting thing that could happen in your year would be finding a slightly interesting piece of clay. The weather is also shoot, and the salary is one of the worst in all of science. Story 72. Massage therapist, LOL. I've had dudes think my job was their dream job, until I made them aware that majority of the people they'll be massaging aren't some hot fitness women or lonely housewife that just wants to be touched. They get the dumb idea that the job is a gateway to intimacy. And actually, it's mostly people with extra weight on them, bad skin, not always great hygiene, and are really there for pain relief, not the BS they see in movies or the internet. Story 73. YouTuber. It was a lot more fun when it was done casually and at my own pace, and a lot less fun when suddenly it started to pay off the majority of my living expenses, and now there are soft deadlines to meet just to keep the income flow steady. It doesn't matter if you're a solo creator or just responsible for writing, filming, performing, or editing. Once you have to start worrying about how every video will perform to keep your bills paid, there's very little romance to be found, particularly when you find yourself pigeonholed into content that pays the bills and not content you personally enjoy covering. Don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled to have found an audience, but there's a world of difference between the me who wanted to be a YouTuber 10 years ago, watching my favorite channels, and the creator now, who has a much better idea of what the job actually entails. Story 74. I don't see train engineer mentioned anywhere. Every 4-year-old dreams of being a train engineer. It must be everything it's cracked up to be. Story 75. Working in the fashion industry. It's not glamorous, lots of competition. The board always sets unrealistic numbers to beat the year before. Having to constantly measure, pin, and/or steam garments is not fun. If you're at a retail giant, then you have to work with multiple factories sometimes in different parts of the world to manufacture the same garment and keep everything within tolerance for material quality, measurements, and color can be a nightmare. Also, a lot of the jobs don't pay that well until you make it to a manager or director title. Oh, and massive layoffs frequently happen. Story 76. Animal care at a shelter. The response I get the most from people is that it is their dream job, and they would love to get to play with puppies, pet cats, etc. all day and get paid for it. I work at a shelter that is involved with the cruelty investigations process that go to court and result in charges. In reality, it's like 40-50 cleaning. You have to see animals in very grim and disturbing conditions regularly, often dealing with traumatized animals that have severe behavior problems, euthanasias due to advanced medical problems, usually were untreated by their owners, or severe aggression, and then dealing with the general public either with adoptions or those whose animals we end up with. More often than not, the really bad cases with tons of animals have mental health problems, which can make things really tough. A good chunk of the time I really get to spend hands-on with the animals is during their physical exams, treatments, vaccines, etc. So not exactly happy, fun playtime. I have bonded with some amazing animals that didn't end up making it to a home for either a medical or behavioral problem, and it still fudged me up to think about them some days. It can feel like a failure on your part to not get them through to a better life after taking them from some kind of hell. Story 77. Being a touring musician. The rock and roll life is really grueling and unforgiving. I think I remember a statistic that one of musicians earn enough to barely survive, and only one of those will ever reach enough success to live a comfortable life. The superstar millionaire is brutally rare, given the number that are actual struggling musicians. Story 78. I don't know if this has already been mentioned, but psychologist, therapist. You watch television thinking therapy is going to be like Hannibal Lecter or Morgan Freeman when he plays that forensic psychologist. In reality, you have crippling student debt in a tiny office where you are sedentary making average wage. If you're in a private practice, you have to pay for your own insurance too, while you drown in client notes, emotional fatigue, and self-deprecation. I would dislike to do anything else though. TB. Story 79. Stay at home, wife mother. Sounds great until you're doing the labor of a full-time nanny, house cleaner, personal assistant, personal chef, and intimacy worker, all in one with no paycheck or time off. Story 80. A job that is so easy anyone can do it, no physical labor and no more than 10 mental input. Now do that 50 hours a week for months. Story 81. Farming. I see so many people say they want chickens and goats and grow their own food. It is a before dawn till after dark job. If you have a lot of animals or milk cows, it is hard to take off to go anywhere. Growing veggies is not all that fun when you have to have a large garden to fill your farm stand to make money. Drought, animal disease, critters eating the garden. It is a long, long day and only spiritually satisfying. Story 82. Wildlife biologist, particularly those who work with hunted game species. Many people seem to have this belief that it's all about being paid to have fun in the outdoors and interacting with cute, cuddly wildlife, when in reality it's mostly about managing people and their actions. And it's often the Dunning-Kruger types people who dislike the government, don't trust or understand science, and think anyone with a college degree is a tree-hugging leftist commie. Story 83. Not from personal experience, but I know doctors you don't realize how little free time most have. They give up large swaths of their life for others. People look at the big paychecks and don't see the rest of it. And the paychecks starting out aren't always what you imagine they are, especially considering repaying tuition. Vets, a bit more 9 to 5 than doctors, but you really have to harden yourself. You save lives for sure, but you have to put down so many animals sometimes based off of money alone. You really have to believe that you're doing the right and compassionate thing, and sometimes that isn't so black and white. Story 84. Librarian, especially in a public library. You're a combination social worker, guidance, counselor, custodian, and no, you do not get to sit around and read all day. Story 85. Mail carrier. It is not a leisurely stroll around the neighborhood. The term going postal exists for a reason. Story 86. Seasonal field biologist. Sure, I get to run around the world doing really cool research in the woods and on neat islands with birds, plants, and bugs, but I also make nothing, have no stability, move 4 times a year, have to live with the people I work with, who I might not get along with for months at a time, and I have to sacrifice any semblance of family, romance, friendships, because I've got to leave yet again for a new job. It's exhausting, and after 7 years I crashed. Story 87. Architecture. It's called an old man's profession, BC. It takes decades to learn, to build your brand, and to make any money. The hours are long and the pay sucks compared to other licensed professionals. They say do it because you love it, not BC of the money. Movies always portray architects as creative, well-dressed hotness, but it's the one-star chicks that get the museum commissions and live in their design mansions. The rest are overworked and underpaid. Story 88. Being a nurse. Most people go into nursing because they want to help people. Then they learn that the current American medical model burns nurses into the ground via high nurse-to-patient ratios, poor pay for the risk involved, scapegoating for systems that lead to catastrophic errors, patients and families who feel being the hospital is the same as being in a hotel. That nurses do not actually graduate nursing school at all prepared to be nurses in everyday life. And that another 3 to 6 months of on-the-job training is required, that hospitals then shorten to 8 weeks, that people are entitled and lazy and selfish and treat nurses like servants, intimacy workers, and worse at times. That our society is set up to promote expensive and futile care rather than to help patients and families be realistic about what is and is not possible. Story 89. Any job in animal welfare? I worked at a vet clinic in a shelter for years, and so many people went, OMG, that's so fun. I'd love to do that and play with animals all day. I wish I could have done that. Instead, I was busy vaccinating animals, intaking them, trying to safely handle aggressive animals, getting shoot on literally and metaphorically, all for less than you make starting at McDonald's. And of course, you get your heart ripped out of your chest over and over again. You do everything you can to help an animal, and it still isn't enough. I have a mantle of them now in urns. Every animal, no matter what, had someone with them, petting them and giving them kisses as they passed. And for what it's worth, you don't want to play with puppies all day. They smell, they all have worms, and they will shoot their worms on you at some point, and they are bitey. Story 90. Chef. Cooking for friends. Family is one thing, but doing it continuously, serving masses of people, all the Fucks King recipes immediately go hard with add 10 kilograms of butter or boil 100 kilo potatoes. It's fudge easy to be creative and throw together the perfect plate. Now 100x it, and it's no wonder chefs pick up substances, habits, and whatever else Borden talked about. Story 91. I've seen way too many miserable doctors. Pretty sure that's one of them. Also, being a famous celeb, I had a tiny taste of it once and wouldn't recommend it all. B or C list actors probably are happier. More freedoms to just do normal stuff, but also the money to do insane stuff every once in a while. Story 92. Working at a vet or kennel. Yes, working around dogs and cats is amazingly rewarding, but Have you ever been anal glanded in the face or mouth? Have a cat jump on you full claws onto your back and not want to let go? Slip and fall in diarrhea? Get cussed out by a customer because the haircut doesn't look right? See how people let their dogs go? No haircut for a year? Or let the dog's nails get so long they turn and grow into their paws? Story 93. Anything that results in fame. People think of the glitz and glory and being pampered, but they completely overlook the trolls and incessant criticism, lack of privacy. Story 94. Video game tester, developer, and basically the whole video game industry. It's glorified because everyone thinks it's their dream job, playing video games all day until they realize it's actual work and you don't really play the games. Companies have no problem exploiting you for your passion, so it's underpaid and understaffed most of the times. Companies exploit the public for the privilege of testing their game for free, often even charging for it. Early access, beta passes, etc. And the public eats it up like they're giving bread to ducks. It's a volatile and ruthless industry. It may destroy video games as a hobby for you entirely. Layoffs if a game does poorly. No more funding. Layoffs if a game does well because they don't need half of the staff after the game is launched. Story 95. Hairdresser. It's not easy. I don't just play with hair all day. I'm a therapist on my feet for 12 hours a day. When I moved out of state to accommodate my husband getting his master's, so many people said, well, at least you have a job you can do anywhere. No, actually having a solid clientele requires staying in the same region. Story 96. Military. It's fun to think about jumping from helicopters and busting down doors, but there are inspections, formations, and safety briefings. Story 97. I was an art teacher for over 2 decades. I would tell people what I did, and the most common response, oh, that must be fun. I remind them that every student in the school would go through my room every 2 weeks. Over 600 projects, over 600 grades, 7 different lesson plans every day. Cleanup is maddening. Misuse and abuse of materials, over 600 different temperament, different age group, every class, and other teachers that think your class is playtime. Story 98. Lighthouse keeper. I suspect that even introverts would miss a little human interaction after weeks alone. Story 99. Launching a startup and/or inventing something and getting it launched. It's extremely hard, lonely, and really unforgiving. Story 100. Nursing 1000. Absolutely nothing like Grey's Anatomy or any medical show, really. It gets extremely romanticized in all the TV shows, and people also romanticize the idea of just getting to wear scrubs. People also romanticize saving lives all day long, when in reality you aren't saving lives 247, and there is a lot of just taking vitals or starting IVs, or even just bringing the patient water or a blanket. Story 101. Hairstylists, long hours, commission-based, unrealistic expectations, and no one wants to pay for what they want. Story 102. Being a doctor, I don't remember reading anything about this level of snot and lung butter in the brochure. Story 103. Flight attendant. No, your job is not traveling. Your job is giving food and drinks just like in a coffee and help people in some stuff. You won't see the world, you'll see airports and, in the best of scenarios, see the area around the airports. Really don't know why people romanticize it. Not that good. Story 104. Renovating. It's all picking out paint chips and choosing fixtures. Never hidden issues and mold and water and mice poop. Story 105. Veterinarian. It's not playing with cats and other animals. It's seeing them suffer and in many cases sadly put them down. Story 106. Vet med. So much shoot, literal and figurative, making someone cry with a conversation nearly every day. So much ignorance and neglect. So much preventable suffering and passing. There are some really, truly fantastic moments, and the rewards are there too, but the awful stuff above is so prevalent, it becomes mundane. Story 107. Veterinarian. Kids think it's all sunshine and rainbows being around cute dogs and cats all day. Nope. Sick animals, some dying, medications and surgeries. It's not as fun as you might think. Story 108. Winemaking. It has little to do with sampling barrels and sipping samples on a patio overlooking a vineyard. It's physically demanding, stressful, messy, challenging, long hours and hard work. And that's just the winemaking part of it. Growing grapes can be difficult farming at the best of times. To top it all off, despite fancy-looking wineries and luxurious tasting rooms, it's not an affluent business. Many wineries never make money and are financed by millionaires who have substantial capital funding that don't necessarily need the money and just own a winery for fun. If a winery actually wants to make money, it's an uphill challenge. Source: I am a winemaker. Story 109. All those get into cybersecurity job postings. You like reviewing logs? You like reaching out to people to confirm if what your system saw actually happened? That entry-level cyber stuff is difficult mentally to stick with. Story 110. Marketing. Mad Men is not an accurate indicator of what you'll likely do. Most jobs last 2 to 3 years. You're often the first to be laid off. New managers like new teams. You can draw what you're doing with crayons, and some C-level executives will still struggle understanding why your branding work has yet to turn a notable profit after 2 weeks. Story 111. Librarian. Look, I love my job, but there is a lot of hard work and red tape in it. Everyone seems to think it's like being Belle in Beast's library. It's not. It's more like wrangling 500 toddlers day in and day out and trying to manage the emotions of grown adults that should have that under control. I have great times at my job and have created memories of wonderful experiences. I also dislike it sometimes. It's hauling heavy boxes, throwing out damaged books you can't save, and now it's also justifying why people should have free access to information, even if someone personally objects to said information. Some days are a constant fight from open to close. Story 112. Firefighter. I used to get asked how cool it is to fight fires and run calls. If we really got cats out of trees, one time for the cat. No one wants to know the depressing shoot of not saving someone from a wreck or fire, seeing a parent drop to their knees while screaming and crying. No one wants to hear about missing important family time randomly because the pager went off and you've got to go now. There's a lot of dark that comes with the job. Story 113. Way far above and beyond any career out there is a chef. The hours suck. You are generally working with hostile degenerates and it's hot and greasy and you are on your feet all day. If all that doesn't deter you from what you feel is creating your masterpieces for the world, then I dislike to break it to you. But you just doing the same 10 dishes night in and night out for people that will just send it back for some dumb reason. Story 114. Veterinarian. I'm not a vet, my partner is. She's wanted to do it since she was 6 and she's very good at it, but it's slowly destroying her emotionally and physically. Story 115. Veterinarian. Many think we play with puppies and kittens all day, but there's a reason it has one of the largest tragic end rates. Story 116. Military service. At least it used to be. I don't know how the youth of today look at it. How do you guys look at it? Story 117. I'm not sure if people romanticize librarianship, but they definitely have the wrong idea about it. You only get quiet if you work at a smaller library. Otherwise, your day is usually really busy and full of lots and lots of talking. Also, at least in my experience, the more you get ahead in this career, the more collaborative the job becomes. Resources are everything to a library, so we're always trying to make and maintain connections and sever the ones that aren't productive anymore. Story 118. Musician. I did it for a while. 8 hours a day practice, 67 gigs a week during tours. I never got anywhere in terms of fame, but I pretty much lived and breathed it. Each day essentially went like this. Wake up at 12 because I went to bed at 4 a.m. Drive jet a lift to a town. Practice for a couple of hours. Arrive at the place at 5 p.m. for endless sound checks. Finish at 7 and wander about a town where everything is closed apart from pubs I can't get pissed at or I'll sound awful, and McDonald's I can't eat at because I'm too wired for the gig. Flick about on my phone until 9-ish. Somehow be up for a party to the extent I had to lead a band and go mad for a few hours. Drink and eat whatever I could find whilst partying with people until 1-ish. This was the only really good bit of it. Pack up and get everything into the van, inevitably losing some vital fudge adapter or lead I'll then need the following night. Go back to wherever I was staying and sleep, either on a couch, the floor to someone else's bed, repeat, which got old extremely quickly. Like I said, it was just low-key shop window gigs and we were pretty much never paid. But it showed me that during all those years practicing and building up to it, I'd forgotten one pretty important thing. I didn't like the nuts and bolts day in day out life of a musician. That had a pretty seismic effect on me. Story 119. Nursing medical work in general. I teach part-time as a nursing instructor, as well as working at a hospital as an NP. I cannot tell you the number of nursing students who have the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed thoughts of being a nurse. They all think they are going to be some travel nurse with no experience at all, let alone don't understand that working 12 and 8-hour shifts suck. Most of them complain about working their 4-hour part-time shifts at work. Story 120. Being an airline pilot is a fascinating and prestigious job, but behind the dream image lies expensive training, high pressure, demanding schedules, and an often complicated personal life. It is a career that requires passion and endurance, as much as technical skills. Story 121. Hair everybody thinks is so easy because anyone can do it, but we stand and work 12-hour shifts with no breaks. It's incredibly social, so it's exhausting for anybody introverted. So many of the people I went to school with didn't even last a year in the industry because they expected to make money straight out of school without having to put any hours in. Story 122. I was going to say any job doing tech support, but who romanticizes about tech support? Il FGO, back to reading the thread on Spycraft. Story 123. Working for an airline in any capacity. I work for a cargo airline and it sounds great at first. Then you realize you need to deal with hazmat spills, nearly getting crushed, being around running engines, hearing loss, heat exhaustion in the summer, frostbite in the winter, waking up at 02 on Knacker to be at work for the inbound flight at 04 on working ungodly split shifts, etc. Story 124. Romance. It sounds nice, but it's mostly like another job, except the financial remuneration is unsatisfactory. Story 125. Homesteading. I live in a sort of rural community, just minutes from an Amish community. So many people here want a homestead. I got close with a homesteader for a bit, still somewhat close, but life gets busy. She got thrown into a wall, pinned between a gate trying to get a bull in a trailer. She luckily only walked away with a broken elbow. She takes Sundays off, which means minimal farm work, no farmers markets. She runs a festival in the fall, farm camps, farmers markets, selling products from her house, a food truck, kombucha business, probably more I'm not thinking of. I've went to pick up items several times. She will be chasing cows around, trying to ship them off in a trailer. Predators will wipe out her chicken coop periodically, so she has to clean up the remnants of that. She has bees, so when they're ticked off, they will try their best to compromise the bee suit, get in there to sting her. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. Story 126. Working as a library assistant. It's basically a blue-collar job, slinging books and pushing a 200-libby cart around. On your feet most of the time. Not sipping tea and discussing literature. Story 127. The trades. It is an absolute lie that any of the trades are good. 99 never make over 70K, and the work is brutal on your body. Second would be project management. You're essentially just a glorified secretary that does all of the CEO's worst responsibilities and get flamed regularly for things out of your control. You're basically a high-paid punching bag lump. Story 128. Making games holy shoot. The crunch times, the lack of job security, no work-life balance, no creative freedom. I can't even begin to tell you how often I've fallen into despair. Story 129. Working cowboy. It's not all riding a horse all day, looking at cattle in perfect weather. It's being out in the middle of a pasture in freezing rain with your arms inside a cow's female body part, turning a breech calf around so you can pull it. Or gathering cows and calves to wean the calves, vaccinate and castrate bull calves in 100-degree heat, fixing fence in the middle of the night after gathering up cows and calves to that broke out, and we're running along the highway, usually in pouring down rain. Story 130. Programming, being a software dev in general. You aren't here doing digital heists, Bruvy, and your code ain't always gonna obey. Story 131. Being a YouTuber. Best case, you are semi-famous. You are wealthy. You have people working for you. Worst, you have to grind. You get criticized for the smallest of things. There is no rest days or holidays, especially if you release on a schedule. You are in the public eye, so privacy is gone. Story 132. Farming. City people see those big machines working the soil or cattle in pastures grazing. It may look fun to play in the dirt, but farming involves very long hours, hard work, and a close working relationship with their banker. It's a tough job, but thank God for those men and women who do the work to feed the world. Story 133. Musician. It's hard work. People are constantly trying to exploit their connection with you, and the adulation gets really, really old. It's much less glamorous than people imagine. A lot of the time you're in grungy surroundings dealing with sketchy people, and it's very hard to make a living unless you get substantially famous. Story 134. Nonprofit work. Lots of people who work corporate jobs romanticize working at a nonprofit because they think it will be easier, and that'll be filled with mission-minded do-gooders. It's often very toxic, and lots of people who are narcissistic, wants the image of being a good person, have martyr syndrome, women with white savior complex who grew up wealthy, who are actually condescending, etc. The pay is usually pretty bad unless you have years of experience and are in a leadership role. Usually direct program roles that are actually making the difference are paid the least. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.